Hey all, I'm Jenna and I love to share how to use the Project Life app to make simple scrapbook pages with all the photos I take on my phone. This will be a slightly more in-depth tutorial on the Project Life app, and I hope it'll show you how easy it is to scrap all the photos you take with your phone too. If you watch this and are then interested in more, please join me in the Simply Project Life Facebook group for more information. The Project Life app is free for iOS and Android users, so be sure to give it a try. Go download the app now if you haven't already. Watch part 1 of my Getting Started guide, and then let's jump into more now. So this is the page I made in my Getting Started guide, part 1. We covered adding photos, cards from the app, and doing basic journaling in that. And so be sure to watch that if you haven't and catch up to me here. And I want to now go over some tips I use to make coordinating pages or even an entire album a little more cohesive. Keep in mind, I'm not a design expert by any means, but after using this app for 10 years and following people in the industry who are trained designers, I will say that I love the creative aspect and final pages I create more and more as time goes by. So here are 10 tips for some more cohesive design. Tip number 1 for a double page spread is that I like to line up the height of the inner pockets, the inner columns. So this row at the top is the same height. This row in the middle is the same height. This row at the bottom is the same height. I, for example, would not do a page like this if it's the same exact topic. Now, if I'm scrapbooking 2 different things, not a big deal. I don't care. But if I am covering a double page spread over one thing, I like the middle to be cohesive. So I don't like that this line cuts through these pockets. It just helps your eye flow for more continuity from page to page. May seem like a nothing deal to some people, but to me, it makes a big difference. And then I would also, for tip number 2, I'm using a lot of black and white patterned cards with pops of color here and there. So I've got the yellow on this spread, but I'll use black and white cards throughout this album and then pop in some color here and there. I made a Hawaii album recently, and it was not that way. It was very colorful, but this vacation calls for something different. So I don't do this for everything. I don't do it for my everyday pages, but this is how I'm going to make this particular album a little more cohesive. And for tip number 3, I will keep the fonts and text alignment for large blocks of journaling consistent. For this project, I'm using one more readable font for my journaling and a more fun font for titles. I tend to do that and keep the journaling font very readable. I love the Railway font in the app. It's great for journaling and readability. I will also keep the justification consistent. This is left justified for this project, but you could do center, right, or full justified, whatever works for you, but I do keep that consistent as well. And then for tip number 4, speaking of journaling, I tell the stories from my point of view. I tend to bullet journal. I tend to just give the who, what, when, where, why, and how of it all. I am not super emotional with my journaling, but I do try to cover the basics. That is something I need a little work on. So if you have any tips for journaling for me, share them in the comments. And for tip number 5, I want to encourage you to use repeated cards and shapes, not just colors like I mentioned in tip number 2, but for example, I've got this little camera icon here and here. And on this page, I've got the yellow repeated. I've got this red repeated, but I've also got this shape, this circle shape here, this circle shape here. And then throughout the album, I'm keeping that in mind. You know, this is the shape of this little tab I got on that card, but I also added this little overlay here to add our step count. So we walked all over this town, you know, but I want to keep that in mind as I'm labeling things like that. I'll keep the tab the same. I'll keep the circle element the same. And that is just another thing. So it's not just about the colors, but it's about the shapes and even repeated cards. And so I like to have a filler card on one page and then a matching journal or title card on another page. So that's something to keep in mind as well. That's the minimum I'll do. I always like to do more things that keep it cohesive, but for most layouts, you will notice for me that I will have a matching pattern on each side of the page somehow, some way. And there's even a trick to make a filler card like this, a journal card, with one of the overlays in the app, in the Happy Birthday to You overlays. And then you can journal on top of it with freeform text. I'll demonstrate that later, but it is a great addition to this app and totally worth using if you like this kind of cohesion as well. And for tip number 7, we're going to keep in mind the rule of 3. This isn't the greatest example of that, and it's one I don't think of often. Your eye moves in a triangle. It's very helpful. So here we've got this yellow, yellow, and yellow. So that helps if you keep that in mind. Again, that's not one that I think about very often, but when I do, I'm always happy with the results. And then for tip number 8, I want to encourage you to leave some negative space, leave some white space on your page. I could put a quote here or something else in all of that white space, but I'm going to leave it as is. I'm also going to leave this as is. It just is a great place for your eye to land, and it also actually helps you focus on the photos and journaling on your page. And for tip number 9, I want to encourage you to keep the background colors of your cards and pages in the same color family. Family is not the right word either. Again, I told you I'm not a design expert, but I'm listening to the design experts. So I want to keep things cool or warm. I wouldn't add a journal card on this page with a cream colored background. I'm going to leave it white or light gray, something cool. And then if I was doing another page, I would keep it all warm with the creams and tans. And that's just something to keep in mind. And then for my last tip, tip number 10, let me encourage you to just throw all of these rules away and do whatever you want. Scrapbooking is supposed to be fun and enjoyable. There are no rules or mandates for scrapbooking at all. So just have fun with it and enjoy the process. And speaking of the process, let's get back to the Project Life app and I'll show you a few more things. Let's begin by going to Preferences under the question mark on the home screen. Here you can set some default templates and fonts and settings. So be sure to toggle through all of these and you'll notice the image up here change as I toggle through the list at the bottom. I'm going to leave it set on that one. You can check your editorial and your 4x6. And then you can look through some of your fonts. Keep in mind that I have both of these fonts set at a 12 and they are vastly different in size. So you may need to do a draft print at home and check the readability of your fonts or the size of your fonts. So that's something to keep in mind if you realize maybe that's too small or maybe that's too large. Be sure to do a test print if you have a question about it. And as you get to use the app, you'll be more familiar with what works. How many lines does a 3x4 pocket really need for readability? And that's always my focus, is the readability. So keep that in mind and do a test print. I leave it set on fonts if I'm working through one particular project. But if I'm bouncing around on different things, I leave it set on last font used. And so that's just something to keep in mind. Oh, let me go back. That's just something to keep in mind when you're working through projects, that there are different settings. So be sure to remember the preferences section. And I keep my square corners on, I keep my drop shadow on, and I leave it set to export in JPEG. The drop shadow and the export format, that might be something you might want to change if you're doing fancier pages, which we might go into later, or you can see more of in the Simply Project Life Facebook group. But for basic collage pages, I leave it set just like this. And keep in mind down here, you can see which version of the app you're using. You can also, of course, see that when you go to your app store and search for the Project Life app. It'll show you what version you're on or if you need to update. So be sure to check those things out and set your preferences to help you get started on the right foot. Now I want to show you about in-app overlays and one of the 2 journaling upgrades called Freeform Text, FFT for short. If you're not familiar with the term overlay, just think of them as minimal embellishments in the app. They're mostly white, but some kits do have some colorful ones or even some transparent vellum-like choices. They are great for plussing up a photo or a card. And I want to do just that on this photo right here. Let's place the overlay I want by changing the kit. We're going to tap on the name of this. It says Midnight there, and these will pop up. I can scroll through all the options or pull down to get the search feature to pop up. And I know the name of the overlay I want is in the simple labels. Okay, there it is. Yep. And I want to use this one right here that mimics the shape on a card on a coordinating page. So these are great for plussing up a photo, like I said, and it's great for a date or a small bit of journaling, a quote. I'm going to put my step count on this. And all of the overlays are super helpful for things like this. And there are little designs and hearts and swirls and frames. So be sure to search for a lot of the other overlays in the app. Like I said, some of them are white. Most of them are white, but let's just do a little search here for overlays. And you'll see that some of them are colorful, some of them are black. A lot of them are white. There are a lot of frames. And there's just a lot. There's so many overlays. They're great. Some of them are really fun designs. Let me just open one up. These are great. You can put this over like a solid card and really get a lot more out of your kits, especially those solid cards. You're like not sure what to do with them. Overlays are a great feature to plus those up a little bit. So be sure to search for overlays and maybe do a test page with some overlays and see how they work in the app. Because one little tip I will share is that if I add this overlay and I don't like it, I can press the back button immediately to get rid of it. But if I've edited all these photos and added a bunch of journaling here and then decide I do not like that overlay, I have to press and hold and throw the whole thing in the trash because there's no way to remove an overlay after you've left that pocket. So let me place my overlay back on there, and then I'll show you one of the, I can't get it to open up. There we go. One of the in-app upgrades for journaling called Freeform Text. FFT is a one-time price of $4.99, and you will be prompted to purchase it here by placing a photo and then tapping on the journaling icon in the upper left. Doing that will walk you through the purchasing prompts, and after you've purchased the feature for one time for $4.99, you'll get to use it on anything in the app, not just journaling on in-app journal cards. So it's a great feature for adding small bits of journaling, maybe a date or a small quote. It's not ideal for large blocks of journaling, but it's doable. I'll show you that in a minute. But first, let me start out by typing out our step count I'm putting on each page or each day for our New York trip, because you just walk all over that city. It was interesting to keep track of. It was almost like going to Disney World. Okay, I'm going to put that there. I'm going to leave it that size and that font. It's fine. And that's it. I'm going to call it good. This page is done for the most part. I think I might change the background color in a minute. But I've placed my photos, I placed my cards, I added an overlay and freeform text and just plussed it up a little bit. One other thing I could do to plus up a page is let me show you this overlay in the Happy Birthday to You overlay kits. There it is. It's this one right here. This overlay will turn this filler card or any filler card into a journal card. And here's where you have to use some freeform text. I'm going to paste in some journaling. No need for you to watch me type. So let me do that. Okay, let me do that. Paste. There it is. Okay. I'm going to come down here and, of course, change the color to black. And it's one long line of journaling. So I am going to place it there. And then here's what you're going to have to do. It's kind of tedious. Keep in mind that freeform text does not auto-capitalize, auto-punctuate, spell check, or grammar check. And you have to manually return every line. So you're going to place your cursor, hit enter. Oops, that needs to come over a little bit. Place your cursor, hit enter, move the box, place your cursor, I think I'll do it there, move it over, place your cursor, hit enter, move it over, place your cursor, hit enter, move it over and over and over and over. The whole block of text has to be done this way when you are journaling a lot of freeform text. It's frustrating, but it is what it is. It's a use it or don't, it is what it is. I have it's complicated relationship with it. And then also we learned recently that sometimes when you paste in text, it's very hard to adjust the line spacing. It won't adjust. But if you change the justification and then put it back how you want it, then the line spacing will work. It's just a quirky little thing. I don't know. Maybe they'll fix that. But for now, that's the workaround. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier, if you're using freeform text and you want, you want to add more boxes on a page, you just tap the plus sign and you can add another box and move it around if you want to. Okay, so I'm going to hit the back arrow and get rid of that because I don't actually want that on my page. And so now, remember, I want to change the background color. That's right. I'm going to change the background color to this light gray in the Project 52 2016 edition. If you don't like the colors offered here, you can tap here and select a different kit. I'm going to leave it at that. Click done. And I'm going to save my page because I am finished. I love the way it looks. I'm happy with this. And I'm going to save the image. And then I'll go back and show you my New York folder. So I just finished these pages and I saved and backed them up. And now I'm going to move this here because I sort my folder by folder order, which allows me to drag and drop and move things around. This is just a 4x6 white card with that written on there in journaling, and I can move it around as I save pages. So that's a little tip. Okay, this was part 2 of a getting started guide, but there is more to learn about the Project Life app, and I would love to share more about it with you in this Facebook group. There are a bunch of featured posts that will help you get started. There's a welcome post with some video tutorials in the comments. Be sure to tap on all the comments and read the tutorials there. There are tons of places where we share photos and we have online crops, and you can post anything to the wall anytime as long as it's within the parameters of the group, of course. We have a ton of options in here. I know I'm scrolling through these fast, but I want to get to this FAQs one. It has a ton of information in this post, so be sure to check that out. But I want to show you a list of freebies. When you download the app, it comes with some obvious freebies. That's this list right here. But there are a few more free kits in the app. Take a screenshot of this and be sure to go download these. They'll be found in the More section if you're new to the app. Maybe you've already downloaded these. One cautionary thing is to, make sure you look at it and actually want it, because once you download it, there's no way to get rid of it. But I want to encourage you to check that out and join us in this Facebook group. Here we go. Join us there for more. I'll be doing part 3 where I show you how to add outside cards to your pages. You can't store them in the app, but you can access them through clouds. So be looking for that soon. And in the meantime, happy app scrapping. Thanks for joining me today. Have a good one.